Hey, fluffer schnoots. I am very excited to be bringing you some, just for fun, speculative history about poetry. I have a little document that I wrote and did a whole bunch of really fun research. I've wanted to do poetry for you for a long time. It has been one of the very quiet things on my EG bucket list. And a reason being is I think it'd make really good ASMR, wouldn't it? I mean, it's poetry. It's like meant for it. But also, I remember learning about English and literature and poetry in school. And where I went to school, learning about poetry was just Shakespeare. That was it. That was kind of like, there was a little bit early, but it was basically just like one thing, and that's what it was. And I didn't like it very much, so I didn't take really anything away from it. I want to turn this into a little series, probably 3 or more episodes. And in there, we will get to classic. I mean, this is what we're doing here is pretty classic poetry, but we will get to the Shakespearean and closer to modern times. They say like hip hop and rap is poetry. I mean, I guess it is. And I would like to explore and learn a little bit about that too. But the main drive for this is to explore and learn about poetry. The little history lesson is just fun talking. I don't want to... It's anthropology kind of focused a little bit, because that's my interest. I like studying the history of ancient people and things, so it was fun for me to dig into it that way. And then at the end we arrive at the actual poetry reading. So it's probably how most of these will go. I guess this winds up being an intro sort of episode, because I won't like introduce it like this for every single episode, but you get the idea. So we're going to talk about the very early history of poetry. And before we talk about poetry itself, in the grand scheme of human existence, poetry is brand spanking new, as far as we know. Now, that's the funny thing. Poetry is likely as old as language. When you look at poetry from a modern lens, like what people are writing for poetry today, it's just kind of any silence almost could be poetry. Maybe that's a little too facetious, but anything could be. And if we look at it from that lens, then humans have probably been making poetry for as long as we could form words. Poetry is a form of art. I am now going to read, and I don't know how much I am going to read versus riff, just like kind of go for it. I did a B-side already and read some poems for my supporters, so I am already a little prepared, but not 100%. So this is going to be an EG reading, hybrid reading, riffing session. Okay. The art in this piece, by the way, is by the lovely Raspberry Fox. It is a rendition of the Christmas EG, actually. We used that as a reference for this room that I am sitting in with the fireplace going, reading you poetry. And now I will begin conjecturing. Before text if a society forgot something, society just being a group of people, tribe, if you will, if that tribe forgot something, the knowledge died with them. And we're talking very early humans, 100,000 years ago, or more. Humans still had to communicate. And if we look at primates, humans have been able to vocalize for a very long time. There's a lot of information that we carry around with us. We communicate through language. Back in the day, the tribal day, we had to know which plants were poisonous. We had to know the migration paths of animals. Once things got more complex, tribal boundaries, you couldn't just walk over there and take somebody's stuff. And another one is family lineages. At some point in human history, who you were related to and associated with became very important, and that information has to live somewhere. Much later on, we began encoding that information in our names. Our brains aren't very good at remembering long lists of random facts, or lists at all, actually. How many of you, as an aside, know your alphabet by iterating through an ordered list? And we're talking computer science, like linked lists. If I said, what number in the alphabet is R? You couldn't. You may, somebody probably could, but by and large, I think a lot of us, we go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, J, K, L, M, N, P, Q, R. Okay, got it. Or if I said, what letter comes before Y? And maybe that's just how we're taught. But it's effective. Children learn it, and we carry it into adulthood. But you know what our brains are remarkably good at? Without even trying. Patterns. They help keep us alive. I mean, you got to know where danger is, and that danger follows a pattern. It also follows a rhythm. And we can take patterns and rhythms and melodies and encode information in them. By encoding laws, histories, and mythologies into strict rhythmic structures, that's like using rhyme and meter and repetition, we build a scaffolding to which we make our memories. Rhythm seems to act like a guardrail or a paved road in our mind. If you forget a word, the beat and the line tell you something that is missing. You know, you forget a lyric, or you misplace lyrics in the wrong verse or something like that. Or you know what song it is the second a beat starts. Oh, I know that. Why are we good at that? That, of all things. In that way, music is poetry music. I think poetry can be music. But in that way, music is just a storage format for our mind. Or rhythm is, anyway. That's the commonality between music and rhythm. Wait, no, music and poetry is that they follow rhythm, meter, things like that. To speak you have to be able to speak physically. The human ability to talk doesn't just come for free. Why can't other animals talk? In a way, humans come preloaded with an instrument. Is it stringed? I think it kind of is. The larynx? Larynx? I'm probably going to mispronounce a lot of things. The anatomical evidence we have on ancient humans helps us understand how we got here, basically. To have poetry, you need to be able to speak it, right? That's the larynx. Larynx? Did you know that in humans, the voice box is lower in the throat compared to other primates? This gives us a larger resonant cavity in our throat, so we can produce a much wider range of sounds. It's not just our lips and our tongue, that lets us articulate. That's not as important as the larynx. Probably. Citation needed. I don't know. But it all works together to be able to create these sounds that you can take the sounds in the way that I'm speaking and turn it into something you can process. We also have control over the muscles in our ribs. Like we can hold our breath. I mean, everybody can hold like animals in general can hold your breath and stuff like that too. There's also a gene involved. It's called FOXP2, FOXP2. And I wrote about it a little bit, but when I was doing some fact checking, I was like, there's another, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm like meta-narrating. So basically, they say that FOXP2 is the language gene. Genetic markers show that it appeared in homos like 200,000 years ago, something like that. It was a very long time ago. But this gene gives us the ability to talk, in a sense. But what's interesting is even if it was 100,000 years ago or 200,000 years ago or whatever, that's a long time, dude. That is a long time for people to be chatting it up. And what else is interesting is that gene shows up in other hominids, Neanderthals, and Denovians, I think, how you pronounce that. But that would indicate that the other early humans, before Homo sapiens took over, they could talk too. So it makes you wonder, what does Neanderthal music and poetry sound like? Rhythmic storytelling didn't develop in a void. It must have been communal. And what I mean by that is a lone human, a long time ago, which probably humans didn't really exist, like just, independent solo humans. That wasn't really a thing. Like, why would you want that? Like, it'd just be like certain death. So communication and language specifically developed as a way for groups of humans to communicate because it improved their survival. And we talked about how humans can, you can encode information in rhythm. And then you have these humans which can make all sorts of like weird noises and sustained noises. They can look at me, I'm talking and talking and talking. That's kind of what I was saying about like the breath. Like we have really fine control over our lungs. I can sit here and talk and then stop and take a deep breath and continue to talk and not get tired. Like that is a fundamentally human thing, which is really neat. But I think that poetry and storytelling really is probably where poetry and things like that started, because you can tell a story, but you can really tell a story. And when you're telling a story about, a hunt or something crazy going on, you want them to remember it. And whether it was a conscious, concerted effort, we started telling stories with like more punch. Maybe some embellishments, maybe some like boom, boom, bang, boom sounds going on in the background. When we're all sitting somewhere, like in front of a fire or something, there is this inclination people have to chat and tell stories. Why is that? That's not the question of this, though. It's like philosophical. Did you know that when you get people together in the same area, same room, and they're all focused on a person or something going on, that they synchronize their breaths and their heartbeats? Sounds kind of crazy, but then when you think of like a music concert, you're like, oh yeah, duh. Everybody is jumping and bouncing and dancing at the same time, like to the same time. And then suddenly we're like, oh yeah, that's just a human thing. It's not even really a human thing. Like you see it in birds, you see it all over the place. There's something about it. I was going to say mammals and rhythm, but birds aren't mammals, are they? Or are they mammals? Are they reptiles? No, birds are mammals. They're warm-blooded. It's the reptile thing that confuses me. I think birds are technically reptiles. Might be wrong on that. Birds are weird. Also really cool. So, this was really cool, I found out in my research. The moment human thought spilled out of our skulls and into the physical world may have been 75,000 years ago at a place called Blombus Cave in South Africa. Ancient humans were chilling and they took shells and strung beads through them. Whoa. They scratched like patterns into ochre. I actually don't know how to say that, but that's something that humans still do today. There's a whole culture in like way Eastern Europe where it turns into Asia kinda. And they were really well known for using that. It's like this orange reddish stuff. I don't know. But 75,000 years ago, these ancient folks, which were Homo sapiens, by the way, and it's worth mentioning because when I was researching, this is more meta narrative. When I was researching, I was like, 75,000 years ago, the Neanderthals didn't go kaput until I think 30,000. So at 75,000 years ago, Neanderthals were all over Europe. So is there any evidence of non-Homo sapiens making art and stuff? And there is, but that's not for this. I just thought that was really interesting. 'Cause 75,000 years ago, taking shells and stringing, getting string and then putting beads, like that's complex. Like that's abstract thought. Like they had a plan. It's pretty cool. But if you stop and think about it right there, they did have a plan, right? Like they couldn't have just, hey, let's take a shell. Hey, let's take a string. I mean, at some point that happened, but what I'm pondering here is that they had to have had words for what they're doing. Right? I mean, hey, go find seashells. Like, I guess you could have gestured, like, see this seashell? Go get me some, like, there's a way to do it maybe, but if by 75,000 years ago they had language, we're inferring, of course, and 75,000 years ago they had language to describe what they're doing here, I mean, is it If they had the ability and know-how and thought to take shells and string beads through them, is it so far to think that they also strung words together into songs and poetry? I mean, that's arguably easier than manipulating objects from the physical world in a multi-step process. Take words and put them together and add rhythm to them. That's easy. Like, skill is hard, but conceptually that's easy. So I think that it's fair to assume, or you can infer from these anecdotes, that, yeah, I think that they probably did have songs and poetry and things like that. There's actually a theory that has been more, I mean, I think it's debunked. I find it really interesting. It's this idea of like a proto-world or a global proto-language. And it's divisive, I think, for, reasons, but the idea is interesting. I think it's true. If you go back far enough in language, like so far you couldn't possibly reconstruct it, but there would have to be a common language that pretty much every human at that cognitive level, anyway, could understand. Like, even if it's grunting, you'd still know, like, grunt and point. If they were spending hours grinding that red ochre into paste, and then separately boring holes into seashells, because like if you could break a seashell, you'd have to carefully drill a hole in it with something, bore it. And that's a whole process. Like, you're taking a physical object from the world and manipulating it in a way that couldn't happen naturally. Like, that's fascinating. So they would have to have words for that. For all of history, up until a point, all communication between humans was literal. So, like, pointing and grunting, that meant leopard, that meant run, that meant get that seashell, that meant food. It was describing what was happening right then and there, right? Like, something crazy is going on and you point at it. Like, that is right on the spot. It's not something that happened in the past, and it's not something that will happen later. At some point, humans turned the corner and we were able to describe past and future events. There's a really, really cool artifact that I revisit sometimes. I really like anthropology. Thanks. Reading about ancient people and imagining what life was like for them. Let me tell you about the Lion Man of the Swabian Jura. I don't actually know what that is, but it's a region in Germany. The Lion Man is a statue carved from ivory, like woolly mammoth ivory. So not something that you can just carve. This takes a time. For somebody to carve, well, for like anybody, like maybe it was a group, I don't know. But the fact that this item exists is extraordinary, because it's also pretty big. And that's not something that you can just do. It's not even something, this is what I'm going to do today. Well, it's having a day to do that is a luxury. And this is the Ice Age, so 40,000 years ago in the Ice Age, we find this Lion Man statue that is carved out of ivory. Never mind the time, also the skill. I can't sculpt. Like, what's going on? But where this loops back to poetry and language is they had to communicate, like, what is going on here? 40,000 years ago? They most definitely had language enough to describe what was happening with that statue. But There is something else really cool about it, though. If you think about working on something like that, where you're carving, you're scraping, right? You're working with a flint knife, mini flint knives. It takes a long time. It's not just a long time duration, but I mean, you couldn't, carve a couple pieces off and move on. You'd have to sit there and carve and carve. You go tick, tick, scrape, scrape, tick, tick, scrape, scrape. And once you get in the groove, no pun intended, it's almost impossible not to hear something zone out. You get that with cooking even. Like when I'm making pizza dough, I really like it. I like to just focus in on the craft of making it, really circular, smooshing it down and putting the cornmeal and stuff and flipping it over and not wrecking it. Get that with baking, you're stirring. Like there's a whole thing to it. We have this really cool thing in our bodies. We already have the instrument, which is our voice. We also have a metronome. It's our heart. It beats, we breathe. When we walk and run, it speeds up, and so does our breathing. Rhythm is everywhere. If you think about it, percussion, like the rhythmic 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the externalization of our own biology. If you're using your own internal meter, you're taking what is inside of you and externalizing it. Like if you're following your heartbeat, That's kind of cool to think about. So we've talked about language, we've talked about art, we've talked about the Lion Man and the interesting rhythms and sounds he's probably making, everybody's making. I mean, it had to have been spiritual or religious. It certainly wasn't just for funsies. Hey, I want to make an anthropomorphic lion, that'd be funny. I mean, humans love lions, we always have. Pretty sure there were lions in Europe at that time. So there's probably mythology going on. If there's mythology, there's probably sounds and chanting and probably music. 40,000 years ago, I think that they found like bone flutes and stuff. So yeah, they're most certainly carrying on. So if they have songs and they have poetry and stories and stuff, about druids passing all these things down, how do you remember all of that? Like, you can remember it, but how in the heck does tribes and generations of humans remember all of these ancient songs? If they didn't write it down forever, it was just passed down through generations, and it would probably change over time, but I don't think anybody minded. So for all that time, these stories and songs were just passed on down. That's crazy. The very first pieces of anything written down, this may surprise you or completely not, it was for accounting. Practical things like how many sheep were delivered to the temple and how much beer the workers drank. I mean, for an urban environment, it makes sense. You've got to keep track of these things, otherwise people could die. It is kind of interesting that that was literally the first thing that was written down. That we know of course. That's what's persisted into us finding. But if we consider for a moment that humanity in urban living had gotten complex enough that you really had to write things down, to keep track of what was going on. There were enough humans around to be congregating and writing new songs, singing new songs. And probably none of that was written down. I think that I think it probably was in truth, just not in a permanent way. There's a lot going on here. But finally, we have arrived at poetry. It's been a trip getting here, but you see that at least from 75,000 years ago, we had abstract thinking. We probably have abstract thinking for a long time, cave paintings and things. But we had the ability to externalize what was in our head into the physical world. We don't have recorders that we can go back and listen to people, so we can just infer when this stuff started going on. So when we finally arrive at 2600 BCE, I'm doing my best with times. I know there are people that are super into Egyptian mythology and ancient Mesopotamia. So I went back in time and tried to find some really great ancient pieces of poetry. And the first oldest one that I could find, this is no oldest piece, but it's the oldest intelligible one that I could get a hold of and read, is called the Kesh Temple Hymn. And where is this from? Sumeria? It's one of the first pieces of poetry, and of course it is a hymn, religious piece. And let me read it to you. The princely one came forth from the house. Enlil, the princely one, came forth from the house. The princely one came forth royally from the house. Enlil lifted his glance all over the lands, and the lands raised themselves to Enlil. The four corners of heaven became green for Enlil, like a garden. Kek was positioned there for him, with head uplifted, and as Kek lifted his head among all the lands, Enlil spoke of the praises of Kek. It is indeed a city. It is indeed a city. Who knows its interior? The house Kek is indeed a city. Who knows its interior? The heroes make their way straight from its interior and perform its oracle rites perfectly. Frisking cattle are gathered at the house in herds. The house consumes many cattle. The house consumes many sheep. Those who sit on daisies bow their necks before it. It wears a crown to vie with the boxwood tree. It spreads out to the vie with the poplar. It is as green as the hills. Will anyone else bring forth something as great as Kek? Will any mother ever give birth to someone as great as its hero, Akagi? Who has ever seen anyone as great as its lady, Nintit? A contemporary of the Kesh Temple Hymn is the wisdom of Shuruppak. Shuruppak. It's written as a father speaking to his son. Shuruppak was the last king of Sumer before the great mythical flood. The piece is passing down a lifetime of wisdom, like street smart wisdom, to his son Zisundra, who is the Sumerian Noah. It's kind of interesting with the flood myth, Noah. Because these instructions had to be memorized by young scribes, they were written in a sharp rhythmic cadence so that you could, remember it. It begins with, well, let me just read it to you. In those days, those faraway days, in those nights, in those faraway nights, in those years, in those far remote years, Shuruppak gave instructions to his son. Shuruppak, the son of Ubaratutu, gave instructions to his son, Zisudra. My son, let me give you instructions. You should pay attention. Zisudra, let me speak a word to you. You should give me your ear. Do not neglect my instructions. Do not pass over the words that I speak. The poem launches in to a rapid-fire list of practical, ethical, and pretty funny warnings, actually. Some of them are expected. Not expected is the wrong word, but I guess the age of the ancient times shows through with this wisdom. But it's also very practical. Like, you listen to it and you're like, yeah, that seems reasonable. Like this one. Do not buy a donkey that brays too much. It will ruin your day. Do not locate a field on a public road. The trampled path will eat your harvest. You should not play around with a married young woman. The slander could be serious. My son, you should not sit alone in a chamber with a married woman. Do not argue when you are drunk. The mouth is a fire that burns the man down. You should not pick a quarrel. You should not disgrace yourself. You should not boast, then your words will be trusted. You should not curse strongly. It rebounds onto you. You should not establish a home with an arrogant man. He will make your life like that of a slave girl. The eyes of the slanderer always move around as shiftily as a spindle. You should never remain in his presence. You should not pass judgment when you drink beer. A loving heart maintains a family. A hateful heart destroys a family. Nothing at all is to be valued, but life should be sweet. You should not serve things. Things should serve you. You should not speak arrogantly to your mother. That causes hatred for you. You should not question the words of your mother and your personal God. The mother, like Utu, gives birth to the man. The father, like a god, makes him bright. The father is like a god. His words are reliable. The instructions of the father should be complied with. The palace is like a mighty river. The middle is goring bowls. What flows in is never enough to fill it, and what flows out can never be stopped. When it is about someone else's bread, it is easy to say, I will give it to you. But the time of actual giving can be as far away as the sky. If you go after the man who said, I will give it to you, he will say, I cannot give it to you, for the bread has been finished up. Moving forward in time a few centuries to around 2300 BCE, that's when Egyptian scribes began carving deeply poetic, rhythmic spells into the limestone walls of the royal burial chambers. This is known to Egyptianologists, which is a thing, as the pyramid texts. These poems and songs and chants are really intensely vivid and fiercely dramatic. They were apparently written and designed to be chanted out loud by priests to launch the pharaoh's soul into the sky, into the heavens. Here is a piece of the pyramid texts of King Unas, like 2350 BC. This piece is called Utterance 245, and it describes the pharaoh's soul sailing into the sky to join the sun god Re. A peaceful ascension, not a violent one. There are crazy ones, like the cannibal hymn, but this one is much more poetic. The cannibal hymn is poetic too, but you get my point. Here we go. The sky's reed floats are launched for Re, that he may cross on them to the horizon. The sky's reed floats are launched for Unas, that he may cross on them to the horizon to Re. The sky's reed floats are launched for the horizon dweller, that the horizon dweller may cross them to Re. The sky's reed floats are launched for Unas, that he may cross them into the horizon to Re. He travels through the cold places. He rows in the field of rushes. The mooring posts are fastened for him among the imperishable stars. And then finally, we arrive at the first named poet. And there's some consternation about this. This is a woman named Enheduanna. She was the daughter of Sargon of Akkad, founder of the Akkadian Empire around the 23rd century. She was a high priest. What's particularly remarkable about her and this poetry attributed to her is that she wasn't just a priestess somewhere that they said, oh, no, she was the high priestess and the daughter of Sargon, which is, it must have been a very, very big deal. What's more crazy is the poems that we have from her are actually Babylonian tablets written in Sumerian, because that was the language, like the bureaucratic language of the empire. But these texts and her poems, the hymns, they're from hundreds of years after her, and they were used by Babylonian scribes in schools. Really, really crazy. I had no idea. It was really fun to find that out. She was the high priestess of the moon god Inanna, at which is an ancient city. She wrote to the goddess Inanna with surprising intimacy. What's more, or I guess also, remarkable is that the works don't just talk of her. Well, that is something, is that they do, her works and poems mention her, but they also refer to her as I. There's a few really great pieces that we have from this time, this work, and I'm going to read some of it to you. The completed works are quite long, but I'm going to read you some excerpts. This is the Hymn of Inanna. The great-hearted mistress, the impetuous lady, proud among the Enheduanna gods, and preeminent in all lands, the great daughter of Suin, exalted among princes, the magnificent lady who gathers up the divine powers of heaven and earth and rivals great An, is the mightiest among the great gods. She makes their verdict final. The Enheduanna gods crawl before her august word, whose course she does not let An know. He dare not proceed against her command. She changes her own action, and no one knows how it will occur. She makes perfect the great divine powers. She holds a shepherd's crook. She is their magnificent preeminent one. She is a huge shackle clamping down upon the gods of the lands. Her great awesomeness covers the great mountain and levels the roads. That was early in the hymn, and then this is later. The great gods kissed the earth and prostrated themselves. The high mountain land, the land of the cornelian and lapis lazuli, bowed down before you. But Ebba did not bow down before you and did not greet you, shattering it in your anger. As destined, you smashed it like a storm. Lady preeminent through the power of An and Inal, without you, no destiny at all is determined. No clever counsel is granted favor. That was Hymn to Inanna. This one is the exaltation of Inanna. Lady of all divine powers, resplendent light, righteous woman, clothed in radiance, beloved of An and Uras, mistress of the heaven, with a great diadem who loves the gods' headdresses, befitting the office of Priestess, who has seized all 7 of its divine powers. My lady, you are guardian of the great divine powers. You have taken up the divine powers, and you have hung the divine powers from your hand. You have gathered up the divine powers and clasped the divine powers to your breast. Like a dragon you have deposited venom on the foreign lands. When like Escary you roar at the earth, no vegetation can stand up to you. As the flood descending upon those foreign lands, powerful one, heaven and earth, you are there, Inanna. Great Queen of Queens, issue of a holy womb, righteous divine powers, greater than your own mother, wise and sage lady of all foreign lands, life force of the teeming people, I recite your holy song. true goddess fit for divine powers, your splendid utterances are magnificent. Deep-hearted, good woman with a radiant heart, I will enumerate your divine powers for you. That's really cool. I like that one a lot. It's all very intense. This is Inanna and Ebih, E-B-I-H, with the line underneath it. Okay. Goddess of the fearsome divine powers, clad in terror, riding on the great divine powers, Inanna made perfect by the holy Ankar weapon, drenched in blood, rushing around in great battles, with shield resting on the ground, covered in storm and flood. Great Lady Inanna, knowing well how to plan conflicts, you destroy mighty lands with arrow and strength to overpower lands. In heaven and on earth you roar like a lion and devastate the people. Like a huge wild bull you triumph over lands which are hostile. Like a fearsome lion you pacify the insubordinate and unsubmissive with your gall. Praise the Lady of Battle, the great child of Suin, maiden of Inanna. As with an elephant I have seized your tusks, as with a wild bull I have brought you to the ground by your thick horns. As with the bull I have forced your great strength to the ground and pursued you savagely. I have made tears the norm of your eyes. I have placed laments in your heart. Birds of sorrows are building nests on these flanks. For a second time, rejoicing in their fearsome terror, she spoke out righteously. My father Enlil has poured my great terror over the center of the mountains. On my right side he has placed a weapon. On my left side is placed my anger. A harrow with great teeth has torn the mountain apart. And that's about all of the poetry I have for you. I really enjoyed Enheduanna. I really enjoyed that poetry. The content of it is very surprising and refreshing for the age. It's really, really neat. And there's only more. Next we go forward in time a few centuries and find even more. So stay tuned for that. I am going to wrap this up now. I hope that you liked it, Flufferschnitz. I'm really happy to have made this for you. Poetry has been on my mind to read to you for quite some time. Feels good to finally work through my bucket list of ideas. I've been watching a lot of ASMR lately. It's been really nice. I hope that you like this one, Flufferbutts. And I hope that you stay happy, healthy, safe, and warm. Until next time.